Hello and welcome to the Massachusetts School of Law Educational Forum. This show is produced by the Massachusetts School of Law at Andover. Domestic violence can be defined as a pattern of abusive behavior in any relationship that is used by one partner to gain or maintain power and control over another intimate partner. It can be physical, sexual, emotional, economic, or psychological actions or threats of action that influence another person. This includes any behaviors that intimidate, manipulate, humiliate, isolate, frighten, terrorize, coerce, threaten, blame, hurt, injure, or wound someone. And that is the topic for today's show. I'm home. Wait, do you see what I got? I had the best day of shopping. You just won't believe it, Dan.
Where the hell you been?
I've been shopping. You knew that.
How much did you spend?
It's immaterial. I got great buys. You'll be pleased.
I asked you a question. How much did you spend?
And
How much of my money did you spend today?
It isn't your money. It's our money.
It's my money.
No, it isn't.
Do I make it?
Don't start with that attitude again.
Do I make it?
I earn it.
Do I make it?
I earn it.
What'd you buy?
Oh, I got your mother. Look it. Won't she just love this? This is for your
I'm
mother.
sure she will. Did you buy any food?
No, I didn't buy any food. We got plenty in the refrigerator.
Why didn't you buy any food?
Because we have plenty in the refrigerator. Anything you need, you could go out and buy.
You gonna make dinner tonight?
No, it's not my turn.
Yeah, I think you're gonna make dinner tonight.
No, I'm not. Don't you?
If next words out of your mouth, I'm making dinner. We're gonna have problems.
Dan, not
We're gonna have
again.
problems. You know what I'm saying?
No!
Yeah.
Dan,
Put the bat down.
I'll kill
you put
you.
the bat down.
I'll kill you.
You put the bat down.
Help me,
Put the bat down.
Help me.
911, what is your emergency? Your call is being recorded. Hello?
You put the bat down.
What's going on, ma'am?
Put the
What's
bat
going
down.
on?
My husband's gonna kill me. I'm afraid he's gonna kill me. Get down.
Okay,
Put the bat down.
ma'am, where are you? Hello? Ma'am, where are you?
I'm at 12 Belleville Street.
Put the bat down.
12 Belleville Street. Okay, hang on.
I'm at come.
Salisbury Control to all units. Code 22 in progress. Signal 1, 12 Belleville Street. Code 22 in progress. 12 Belleville Street. Signal 1. Hello, ma'am?
Quick, I'm afraid he's done this before.
Okay, ma'am, does he have any weapons? Hello? Ma'am,
Yes.
does he have any weapons?
Oh, help.
No. Okay, well, I have everybody en route, okay? Just stay on the line with me, okay?
We're okay in here. We're okay. Don't worry about it. We're going. Wait, what are you doing in here?
Who's screaming?
Nobody.
Now, sir, put the beer bottle down, the bottle down, please. Put it down. What's going on? Sir, do me a favor, stand up. Just want to make sure you don't have any weapons on you. Okay, just stand up.
Okay, man. What's wrong, guys? What's wrong?
What's going on?
Nothing's going on.
Okay.
That's all. I'm going here.
Have a seat. Have a seat.
Have a seat.
Have a seat.
Sergeant, Police Detective Thomas.
What's going on?
Okay.
Oh my God! Thank God! Thank God!
Nobody
It was.
gets hurt.
Don't know about 911 call.
Nobody got hurt. You
Nobody got hurt. Absolutely.
have an argument though?
Am I glad
Yeah, a
to
little
see
disagreement,
you?
I say.
Okay. Well, we all have arguments.
My husband was trying to kill me.
Can you tell me what happened?
Yeah, he was mad because I wouldn't cook. He's done this to me a number of times before. I mean, look at me, look at me, look at me.
Did he just grab you?
Yes, he did. He grabbed me, he threatened me. Look at my legs, he kicked me.
No problem today?
He kicked me.
Crazy.
He kicked me.
Where did he kick you?
Right out there, and I tried to get in here, and he came in after me.
Really? Is she taking medications or anything?
She might
I don't know. it
Being
might
treated by a
just happened
psychiatrist?
This happened last week also, so it could be left over. He's really a menace.
You said it happened last week. Did it happen from him?
Yes.
Is that your husband?
Yes, that's my
both
husband.
trained?
She's always spending my
His
money.
name is
You know, I'll be
Dean.
honest with you.
And he's the father of my kids, or I would have left, but I'm worried
Tell
about
me she went
them.
shopping today.
Oh my God, you better believe it.
No.
Wow, so yeah, how much we're
Okay.
dinner on the table.
Yeah, it happens. It happens.
Not that I'm aware of,
You didn't
no.
have dinner? You got a lot of good stuff though,
No,
right?
He doesn't have it. So you came in tonight, and the argument was about.
He was mad that I had purchased something for his mother, nonetheless, and our children.
She hit me in my arm.
He hit you. Any bruises or anything?
He's got this
Just
idea
happened to mention
that I should serve him, that he's the king of the castle, and that isn't realistic, officer.
Okay. and then he physically assaulted you
Yeah.
by causing that.
Yeah,
Previously
he
on that,
told
and
me.
he kicked
I
you,
forgot what he
physically.
said. But he said something like, you know, you're not going to do this again. I'm going to beat you, or I'm going to kill you, or something like that.
Okay, now I just met your husband. I noticed he had shoes on. Did he kick you with the shoes on?
Yeah.
Is that what damage? Okay, I'm gonna go out with the other officer and talk with your husband. I need to ask you this now. What would you like from the Salisbury Police Department?
You cannot let him stay here. You cannot let him go. You've got to lock him up.
Okay.
Because he'll come back and kill me. I swear to God, he will this time.
What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to stay right in here, and I'm gonna go talk to your husband with the other officer, and then I'm gonna knock on the door and I'm gonna announce myself and I'm gonna come back.
All right.
Okay? Okay, just don't pick up the bat, okay?
Whatever she says, it's a lie.
I'm not lying.
She's lying.
Sir, can you stand up, please?
Can I stand up? Absolutely. Law and order is my middle name.
Sir, at this time, you're going to be placed under arrest for domestic assault and battery, okay?
What about my wife?
Okay, your wife right now, I'm still interviewing her. You have a right to be able to say your defense in court, but right now, you're being placed under arrest for domestic assault and battery.
Yeah, but she also assaulted me.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. Right now, we're gonna have to go down to the station, we'll figure it out down there, all right?
We're going to walk out the door right here, sir.
I don't know, guys. I don't think this is fair. What are you arresting me for?
Well, there's plenty more down there.
I'm telling you, I'm innocent. Come on, you guys don't even listen to me.
No, we're not here for that.
Come on, I pay your guys payroll, man, with my taxes. Jesus!
We're only
You're not
doing
even
our
listening to
job.
me.
Okay, sir?
Your hand going in.
Watch your head going
Yeah,
in.
don't bang my head either. Jesus Christ, I got an attorney. I'm gonna sue you guys. Seriously.
Salisbury Police. Salisbury Police.
Still in here.
Okay. Ma'am, just to let you know what just happened, your husband was just placed under arrest.
Thank God.
He was being charged with domestic assault and battery. Okay.
Will they lock him up?
He is locked up now. He's going to Salisbury Police, and that's where he's going to get booked.
Can't not be let out.
Okay. What's going to happen is he has to write for bail, which usually in these cases they're very high, especially immediately after, and sometimes they don't have bail depending
That's
on
good.
what his record's like. Would you like to get an emergency restraining on him?
Yes.
And what if you do have it? You said you never had one.
No.
But that'll entail that he has to stay away from you at this time. You can't go near your workplace, and the judge will tell you how far away. If you have children, if you can't go near the children, you can't
That's
go
what
certain
I
houses
want.
and relatives'
That's what I
houses.
want.
Okay, I'll walk you through that paperwork. Do you want to go down to the Salisbury Police Department?
Is he going to be there?
He is.
No, I'm not
Okay.
going.
We can do that here. I have all the paperwork.
All right, fine.
I'll have you file an offense report so you can write down exactly what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And right now, if you don't mind, I brought my camera. I'm a crime scene photographer. I'd like to take some pictures, if you don't mind, of your injuries. It'll
Okay.
help me for court purposes.
Yep, that's fine. You want to
Okay.
start with my leg?
No, to be honest, what I need to do is I need to go far away to get you to show
Yeah.
who you are, totally who you are. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Now, if I can start with your leg.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. And now I'm going to do a side view so I can get you around. Okay. Okay. And now, if you can take your glasses off for me, please. I just want to get a picture of
I
your
really
eye.
hate to do
I
this.
know. I'm sorry.
When we talk about domestic violence, what types of relationships are covered by that phrase, domestic violence?
Well, traditionally, domestic violence, people thought of a traditional couple, a husband and wife, and they'd kind of leave it at that. I think nowadays that's grown into all sorts of different relationships. It can be a dating relationship. It can be a same-sex, same-gender relationship. It can be a brother and sister relationship, a cousin. The laws around the country kind of cover various aspects of that. It would be people that just live together. It could be that kind of umbrella, under that kind of umbrella.
And in your experience, do you actually see that it does cover a wide spectrum of relationships when we talk about different abuse situations?
A very wide spectrum.
And now, what types of domestic violence abuse specifically are we talking about? And we tend to think of the batterer only, but are there other forms of domestic violence that people should be aware of?
Oh, absolutely. It can go as far as murder, taking one's life. Domestic violence covers all sorts of things. It can be threats. It could be verbal abuse. It could be placing one in fear of imminent danger, if you will. Primarily, it's for lack of a better way to say it, fisticuffs. People hitting each other, and then committing what you'd call a domestic assault and battery, if you will.
And is psychological abuse even considered a form of abuse such that it may warrant court or police intervention?
Absolutely, absolutely. That happens a lot. The traditional, if you will, traditional batterer is someone that usually is a control type of person, one that wants to control a relationship, would control the partner into what friends that partner can have, what family members the partner can talk to, who can come and go, their home, things like that.
In your experience, what do you think are the major causes of domestic violence?
It could be anything. Could be anything. It's, you know, people say that it only happens in poor neighborhoods. That's a total misnomer. It happens everywhere. It's the daily pressures of life, whatever those pressures may be. It could be substance abuse. It could be, it's just a variety of things. It could be sometimes mental disorders and what have you. It could be any number of things can trigger domestic violence.
So that perception that it only happens to other people who aren't quite as well off as those of us that sit in judgment, it's not really true. I mean,
it's not true at all.
Are there signs that people can look for that occur, that it will happen over the course of a relationship, that they should be aware of prior to there's a more serious incident that would require police intervention?
Well, repeating the control person, the person that wants to control everything about a partner's life, where they work, who they talk to, not allowing them to have a cell phone, not allowing them to talk to their parents, their brothers and sisters, who can come and go in the house, things like that. That's a telltale sign of someone that has the potential to commit domestic abuse. But there are other things too, family pressures. There could be a very happy couple with a troubled child that you know, that one partner or the other can't take it anymore, and they start lashing out and commit abuse either on the partner or the child itself.
Why, when there are signs like that, why don't people reach out earlier to either seek your intervention or other assistance with these relationships?
Well, we all come from families of one sort or another, and certain things, I think, happen behind closed doors that you keep behind closed doors. So people are generally very private. When they come out on the front porch, they want everybody to think that everything's okay. And let's hope that everything is okay, but sometimes things go on in homes that aren't okay. So people are really sometimes hesitant to come forward and bring their family problems to the public arena.
When they do feel that they just can't face whatever the problems are that they have right now, are the police and other law enforcement personnel really receptive to trying to aid them and confidentially aid them through their time of need?
Absolutely. That's changed completely the mindset of the police officer from the past, I would say 20 years, through some really good laws and good policies and procedures and good training. Police departments have formed partnerships with courts, social service agencies, and have instituted certain things within the departments to be very proactive. Before, in domestic violence cases, police departments were reactive. They'd go to the same house several times a week, even some places, and just kind of tell the husband, if you will, to go take a walk, cool off, and when you come back, everything will be all right. Well, invariably, everything was not all right, and the abuse continued. So I think that police departments have really come around, and they're really focused on this problem, and I think that the numbers are there reducing domestic violence incidents as a result of proactive police departments.
And proactive police departments would have a ready list of resources with respect to safe houses and counseling services and other services that someone would need along these lines?
Absolutely. There's three numbers, 911, and that gets the police to your house, and you shouldn't hesitate to call. I mean, the police officers, as I say, are well trained in this matter, and they give the person, the reporting party, some options, up to and including removing the person that perhaps committed a domestic violence incident, if you will, that's covered under the law, removing that person from the home, even temporarily, and then hopefully things can be put back together in a safe and secure manner. The next step from there would be emergency restraining orders, if you will. The courts get involved. I know in Massachusetts, every court, including the housing court and the land court, if you're a judge, you can issue a restraining order. So you could be a judge from the land court, and you have the ability to issue a restraining order. And that's noteworthy because that's how important society views a restraining order now. It's not an end-all, but it's certainly very important.
So there's really a two-step intervention that the police would provide. A, they take the batterer away from the premises and perhaps place them in the criminal justice system, and B, make sure that there are services available, both counseling and otherwise, for the person that is suffering from the abuse?
Absolutely, very important. That the person who reports and anybody that's thinking of reporting the domestic abuse or thinks that the potential's there for domestic abuse, help is available and they should call. And it's not embarrassing. I think police departments do a real good job of keeping those things as quiet as they can while helping the victims, if you will, and the families that suffer at the hands of domestic violence perpetrators.
And that's available on a 24/7 basis, on a confidential basis, to the extent that you can provide those other resources to them?
I would say the police departments around the country are 24/7, so somebody's going to get you help.
Once we decide that we have to involve the court system in it, that you've taken the batterer into custody or whatever, do you find, general matter, that the courts are responsive to dealing with the issue of handling the batterer, issuing restraining orders, and really trying to assist to make sure that there is a safety net in place for the person that's suffering from abuse?
Well, a domestic violence restraining order, a lot of people don't realize this. If you and I are partners and we're living together, we can continue to live together. I can still have a restraining order against you. It can be a no abuse type of situation. That's a civil order. The restraining order is a civil order. When you violate it, it becomes a criminal matter. So the court gets involved on the civil side to start with and tries to not control, but direct your behavior in the right direction. And if you do violate that, it becomes a criminal matter. But the courts absolutely do a great job getting involved with the police, probation, and other agencies, advocates for domestic violence victims.
And while the violation of that restraining order is a criminal matter, it would, the likelihood is it would result in incarceration of that person at that point?
That depends where you are, sometimes in the severity of the violation, but the potential is always there when you commit a criminal act to be incarcerated. So the short answer to that is yes.
Because see, that's what some people criticize the restraining order as well. It's only a piece of paper. So how effective can that be in helping someone? Because if the batterer is determined to hurt someone, is it the police that have to be that first line of defense? Because the restraining order, how effective can that be against that type of violent offender?
Well, that's what a lot of people ask themselves, and that's a good question. And here's what it does. We, in this police department, and a lot of police departments, will do domestic violence checks, we call it, domestic restraining order checks on the houses where folks have restraining orders and they've had domestic situations. If they did not call us, we'd never know whether they're living under those circumstances or those fears. So the restraining order is a result of them calling us. That's the end result, if you will. And it's not a Spider-Man shield. I mean, it doesn't save you from everything. It doesn't save the police from everything either. But it is a great first step, and it has cut down considerably on domestic violence, I think.
And proactive police departments would, in fact, monitor those houses where there's restraining orders in place, even absent a call, in order to try and protect against some of these issues.
Some police departments do it, and at least in today's computer age, if there's a call for a disturbance at a house, a neighbor calls there's some sort of disturbance going on at apartment A1 on 11 Main Street, most police department computers can easily see that there's a restraining order in effect at that, and you're going to handle that call differently. So that's the benefit of a restraining order.
Once the victim decides that they want to press the charges, and that's really a difficult issue for a lot of victims, isn't it?
Well, A lot of times victims don't have a choice in that matter. Most laws now mandate that police officers shall arrest in domestic violence situations. So the victim, while very important, in some cases go by the wayside, if you will, without their testimony. You don't absolutely need the victim's statement or testimony. The officer's observations. The officer can make an observation. She can go to a scene and observe that there are marks, things consistent with domestic violence, and that would cause an arrest. That's enough probable cause for an arrest.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, you have the benefit of being both a lawyer and the chief of police, so you have a strong background in both law enforcement and the law, prosecuting and defending cases. Isn't it much harder to go forward without the victim? And if you were going forward without the victim, how do you provide the proof necessary to convince the court that there was in fact a battery or there was in fact an abuse situation?
Well, there was just a recent article in the New York Times that addressed that. Digital photography is one way to do it. They take pictures right at the scene or right at the police station or a safe place of the victim. And the photos, depending on the rules of evidence, of course, and introducing things if it goes to a trial, those photos can be introduced as evidence in lieu of the victim's testimony. Sometimes it's better not to have the victim testify. It's better just to have the photos introduced, and the photos tell a lot.
And the pressures put on the victim after the fact are financial, are family, and again go back to sort of the situation you said before. No one wants to have their dirty laundry aired in public, so there is some real pressure not to pursue the case once the immediate threat is over. Is that correct?
Sometimes. I think that's changing, though, and I think that people have to be, victims have to have, if they can, have a healthy attitude about what this is going to do. If they're not going to stay with this person, then I think at least you have an obligation to make that person be treated, because they're going to end up with somebody else. Or if you are the father of my children and I'm going to end the marriage and you've abused me, what's to say that you wouldn't abuse the children? So I think you almost have if you don't want yourself, someone else, you have an obligation for someone else to make sure that the person, there's some intervention from somewhere to try to slow it, stop it, or make it, completely go away.
It greeted you at birth. It was there for your first step, your first mistake, your first kiss. It's with you when you win, when you lose, when you pick yourself up again. In every moment, you can feel it. Life. Human right number 3, the right to life. What are human rights? Find out at youthforhumanrights.org.
I believe in nature.
I believe in the spirit.
I believe in trust. Beauty.
I believe in my mom.
Strawberry ice cream.
Fortune cookies.
Chocolate.
I believe in
the tooth fairy.
being honest with yourself.
I believe in Santa Claus.
Aliens, of course. I believe what I want to believe.
I believe in myself.
I believe in myself. I believe in peace.
Hello and welcome back. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, landlords frequently turn away women who have protection orders or other indications of domestic violence. It is suggested many victims of domestic violence fear calling law enforcement if they are in danger due to zero tolerance for crime policies. These policies allow landlords to evict tenants when violence occurs in the home, regardless of whether the tenant is the victim or the perpetrator of the violence. Under a similar one-strike policy, federal law allows public housing authorities to evict families for criminal activity committed by a tenant's family member or guest. Some public housing authorities have improperly used this provision to evict victims of domestic violence.
Tell us, when you arrive on the scene at the home where there's been a call of domestic violence. Now, the police officers generally are already there. You're the detective on scene. What is the function of both the police officers and the detectives who arrive on the scene for a call of domestic violence?
Good question, because they had two separate distinct functions. The uniformed guys get on scene, they try to de-escalate. What they'll do is they'll take the victim aside with one officer, and the perpetrator or whoever's being alleged was the abuser will be brought to another room so they can't hear what's being said, so the victim feels comfortable in talking. And then when detectives get on scene, we pretty much already have the information what's going on. We'll take photos, crime scene photos of it if it is a crime, and also of the victim, and we'll take any other information from witnesses that may be on scene.
When you get there, do you arrive that it's do you determine that it's oftentimes a he said, she said situation where they're both sort of arguing, they each have a story that's very different from the other?
Almost every time.
That must make it then harder to try and make a determination on the scene as to who was the batterer and who was the batteree, and how do you then pull one of them out of the house and put them into the system?
You're exactly right. That is the hardest thing to do. But from your years of training and experience, you use that, and when you pull them apart, you start breaking down the stories by interviewing them, and then you find out exactly who's telling the truth and who's not, and you look at the injuries and to see if they're consistent with what they're saying, alleging this happened.
So the physical examination is very important in making that determination.
Correct.
Now, do you find that your training, both from the police academy and as a graduate of law school, has sort of helped you make some of these determinations and been able to help counsel some of the victims and the like?
I think that, to be honest, that's minimizing it. It helped me, and it helped me a lot in the academy. They hit domestic violence really hard in the academy, and we learned a lot of the laws. Law school helped me in ways I would never think. I completely think different. Never mind the case laws, the Crawford v. Washingtons, and what I never thought of it when a uniformed officer, what the results were. I just went in and kicked down the door, and we grabbed something, we left, and never thought anything. In law school, it helped me. It's immeasurable, to be honest.
So when you start to think about the prosecution of the case as the detective investigating these types of issues, you do start to run the analysis of evidence and what the court is likely to do with the pieces, so you really can be more effective at investigating these and helping the victims?
Exactly. And that's the first thing we look at. We start talking, guys, listen, we can't use this, you have to approach it this way for exact reasons, for the assistant district attorney, what they're going to need for exculpatory evidence, what we have to get here, what will be let in and what we can't let in. And that means everything. That's whether we win that case or we lose it.
Assuming the victim wants to go forward, and I guess there are situations where you can go forward without the victim, but if the victim is willing to go forward, how responsive do you find that the system is to these issues of domestic violence and really trying to offer help to the victims of domestic violence?
Very helpful. And when I first started, conversely, it wasn't very helpful. We would get on scenes and we just say it was a he said, she said, and we told them just to walk off, just to cool off. To be honest, it's 180 degrees the other way now. The system is all set up for the victim, and there's many different avenues. And we use the Women's Crisis Center, for instance, as one conduit, and there's the whole system is set up just to help the victim now.
And the police department is a major resource, not just for law enforcement alternatives, but for counseling and safe houses and all of the rest of the resources that one might need to respond to a situation like this?
Yes, sir. It's exactly what we said. We'll sit there and we'll give the 209A rights to the victim. We help them. We bring victims right to the Women's Crisis Center. We will bring them to a safe place no matter where it is. We'll set up with other communities and make sure they're there. Anything that will help that victim that night, if it's medical, we'll bring them to the Anna Jakes Hospital, which is in the report local hospital. Anything that is needed for the victim, we sit and we help with.
Now, when a restraining order has been issued by the court, now that restraining order generally would prohibit contact and even phone calls between the abuser and the victim. Is that correct?
Correct. There's usually a stay-away order involved, a no contact, and also what usually we'll say on the restraining order, no third-party contact. They can't tell somebody else to call and threaten them to also go.
And that's done as well. I mean, they involve other family members or friends to try and put a little pressure to try and make the situation go away, so to speak?
Exactly. The two people, the spouses that are together, if they're married or if they're boyfriend-girlfriend situation, they know who to contact that can put pressure on them, and that's also on there. If there's children involved, there's also a stay away from children, also the household, workplace, and any other friends. Anywhere that the victim may be, there's a stay away order.
So the court is, by way of a restraining order, able to establish sort of a safe distance in both not just physical presence, but any type of contact whatsoever.
Yes, and it's my experience, the victim is actually mostly for physical, and the restrainer will also give feet or yards, like 150 yards. So if you're out to dinner and the person just happens to walk in, they have a duty to leave, and vice versa. If the perpetrator is in eating and the victim walks in, it isn't the victim's right to leave. The perpetrator has to leave. Once they see that person there, they can't be within 150 yards or whatever the restraining order says on it.
Mark, now many people are very fearful of both the abuser but also the court process as well. What suggestions would you have for them to overcome both the fear of actually reporting it and the potential for additional violence in the home then, and as well as the fear of how will the court system deal with this very personal issue?
Excellent question, because many of the victims we deal with, that is their number one concern. Their fear. They're fearful of the abuser, that we're not going to be able to stop them, that they're going to have to go back there and live with them. What's going to happen in court? Are they going to get, they've seen movies on TV and they think they're going to get badgered on the stand and they're going to look credible, and they're petrified about the system. We beg the victims to contact us. We can inform them that we have many different ways to protect them. And then one of the key ways is they have to give notice, because if we don't know, we can't stop this. It's going to keep happening. It's a repetitive issue that the abuser is going to keep abusing. If they tell us, we have many different ways to keep them safe.
And the other part of that, just as we work it through from a standpoint of a legal analysis, is that if you wait for that one colossal event, the first thing we hear about is the police have never been there for any calls of violence or domestic problems whatsoever, so how could it rise to such a level? So I mean, in part, some of that fear of reporting it has to be overcome because the police have to be involved more earlier and more often in order to help try and bring some sense of calm to the situation.
Well, that helps the paper trail, but it'll also do like a preemptive strike, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
It'll stop that final thing from happening. And it's not right for anybody to put their hands on to verbally threaten anybody, male or female. So when we get to them, the victim, we walk them through the whole process. When the detectives get on scene, we give them our card and our cell phone number and tell them to call us 24/7. If they ever have an issue, they have a right to call me and my cell. They can wake us up at 2 in the morning, which 2 victims have, and I came down with uniform guys and we took the person out. And conversely, through the whole court system, when they're testifying, the victim witness, the Women's Crisis Center stand right at them, with them while they're testifying. Through the whole process, they're with them all the time to help them through that, because they understand what a fearful and how scary this is for people that have never gone through this before.
Well, let's talk about, and as a professor at a law school, it's the harder part of our profession, is the lousy part of lawyers. I mean, people are afraid that they're going to get into court and they're going to be savaged on cross-examination or direct by the attorney. Is the victim witness advocate is there to assist with the process? There's also a representative oftentimes from one of the resource centers there to try and provide some level of comfort. And there is a district attorney available to ensure that the cross-examination or the examination of the witness doesn't go beyond the bounds of acceptable conduct. Is that correct?
You are exactly correct. The resources are there. The victim witnesses, the advocates also there with the Women's Crisis Center, and also the assistant district attorney is there. And we walk the victim through the whole process, what may be asked, what's not going to be asked. And we ask what are their concerns and their fears, and they tell the district attorney, as in Newburyport District Court, where their excellent attorneys are, and they'll walk them through the stages, and they'll say, anything that goes over the line, we'll stop it. They only have a right to ask certain things about the events here. Anything else, and they want to ask your past or start alleging whatever, we'll stop that. And the judges are excellent there too, and they stop that. They don't allow it.
And from your experience, if the victim cooperates with the process, testifies, is the court and the judge sitting able and to effectively deal with this situation to prevent future harm?
I tell you, I can't think of a better court, to be honest. Every court that I've gone through, that sometimes get moved, they move venues. Domestic violence has come a completely, again, 180. When we go through that system, the system is prepared and ready for every situation. And when the victim goes through, the success rate, to be honest, is through the roof.
The effects of domestic violence on immigrant victims can be magnified due to fear of seeking assistance and cultural difference. These influences can create barriers for immigrant victims, such as language barriers, lack of knowledge of legal protections, fear of the police, cultural pressures, and social isolation.
A lot of the barriers that I came across when working with immigrants definitely revolved around the social. Big part of it was the legal, and the other part was the cultural norms. So those were barriers that I...
Do you think it is harder for immigrant women to come forward with some of these issues of domestic violence because of the economic issues or the immigration issues and things of that nature?
I do. In my experience, I found that the legal aspect of it was a very, very big barrier for them, specifically for individuals who did not have any type of status in the country. It was one of the dynamics that was often used against them by their batterer, which prevented them from even reaching out to either the police or even receiving medical attention when severely injured. The other aspect with respect to the economics is that a lot of the times they are working pretty much under the radar, and so not only are they being exploited at work, but they're also being exploited at home by their batterers because they got to turn in whatever income they're generating.
So the economic issues also are even more significant than one would find generally when we talk about domestic violence issues?
I think it's definitely a big part of it as well, particularly because they can't go out and find a job like any other person could. It's very difficult for them to do that without any immigration status. So that is definitely a big barrier.
What about the trust issue? Does that become an issue where people have reluctance to come forward because from some of the countries that they have immigrated from, they couldn't always trust authority or the police to actually help them and assist them to pursue their rights?
Yes, in my experience, there was definitely a mistrust of the legal system, particularly because in a lot of the other countries, a lot of the countries that a lot of the people are coming from, and I work predominantly with the Latino culture, some Middle Eastern, but not a lot. It turns out that the legal system isn't really protecting victims of abuse, and it's normally accepted in that culture. And so even when they are reaching out, although legislation now in a lot of the countries are technically supposed to be protecting women, it's really not being implemented. And so even when they are reaching out for those countries that have implemented some sort of legislation against abuse, it's not being followed through. And so it's still, they call and they're not receiving any help, or when they do come, a lot of the times the male is the person who often pretty much is believed in whatever the situation is.
Well, when they do come forward, when the Latinos or other immigrants come forward, is the court system assisting them through whatever difficulties they may have, or is it become even more of a problem once inside the system?
Well, it's interesting because I have found that for part of the population, there is definitely an alleviation when they do reach out, and they feel as though their feelings and their experiences are being validated and they are receiving supportive services. However, there's the barrier once that does happen of them trying to figure out what's going to happen next, where are they going to go. Because they're immigrants, a lot of the times they don't qualify for a lot of the services that non-immigrants qualify for. For example, DTA services.
What's that?
The Department of Transitional Services, welfare in a sense. So they don't qualify for any services from the welfare department. They don't qualify for housing. They don't qualify for a lot of the free medical aid that's available because of their immigration status. And so that does become difficult, you know, once they are out. There's definitely a lack of services. There's definitely a lack of language services that are being provided in a lot of the agencies that are providing services and are catering to immigrants. And the other aspect of that is that once they do reach out, they are, you know, they're now isolated by their families, by their groups, their social groups, because this is such a norm in the culture that going against it is definitely looked down upon.
Help me with that. So there is an additional cultural barrier that one would not find elsewhere to actually speak out about the problem. It really should be a family issue type of situation?
Right. It is perceived as a family matter, and it is very well accepted. It's, you know, a lot of the times when I worked with women, it was, you know, when I would ask them what happened to them or to tell me about their, you know, about their experience, they would say, they would be very surprised that I wasn't, my first question to them was, well, what did you do, you know, to deserve this? And so that was, to them, that was very different. So to even hear someone say, tell me what happened to you, as opposed to what did you do, was something very different, because culturally, it is such an accepted norm that to them, this is the way life is.
So once they get past the separation between immigration and the court relief for domestic violence, what comfort can you provide people to let them know that that system is there to help them, whether it's a social service agency or the court itself?
Well, there's definitely services that are available. In 1994, Congress passed the VAWA Act, the Victims Against Violence Act, and so a lot of the funding that came through that act has been geared towards assisting immigrants, assisting individuals in situations such as theirs, pretty much obtain some sort of status, you know, by means of using that particular act. And so it is there and it can help them. I know for a fact that there's individuals who, despite the fact that, you know, they are married to a U.S. citizen or an LPR, legal permanent resident, they can obtain and adjust their status based on that, even though they've never petitioned for them, and even though, you know, they have petitioned for them and they now have a conditional visa. So there is aid available. There are definitely services available to assist them, you know, by means of reaching out, you know, with the Victims of Violence Act.
Joe. Steven. Eric, over here. I'll take him right there. Alright, take you. You, right here.
Krista, make sure you stay with her the whole time. She's new to the country. This is her first
Mom,
day. This is a
Mom,
brand
Mom,
new country.
Mom,
It's a whole different
it's gonna
culture.
be okay.
Good, now make sure you stay with her the whole time. I'll be here right
Okay.
after school to pick you up.
Okay, Mom.
Okay, have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye. Ignore my mom. She's so annoying. She's totally freaking out about this whole thing. She freaks out about everything. She always does that. Ugh. Ignore my mom. So, ready for your first day in the wicked castle of doom? I mean, like, seriously, it's so boring. I don't know how they could put us through this, like, every single day. How many schools do you have in your village? None.
Welcome back. A domestic violence restraining order is an order that helps protect you from someone who is abusive. It may contain orders telling the abuser what they cannot do to you. It may also have orders that tell the person to stay a certain distance away from you.
Judge, when people come before your court for restraining orders because of abusive situations, what type of information should they have in order to be successful before the court in seeking the court's assistance?
Well, they need to know they have to fill out an affidavit that's signed under the pains and penalties of perjury that details why they believe they're entitled to a restraining order under 4 categories, either that the defendant attempted to cause them physical harm, caused them physical harm, placed them in fear of serious physical harm, and the 4th category we don't see so much, but we do see it, is require them to enter into sexual contact without their consent. So they have to know that they need to fill out the affidavit so that it provides enough detail as to when these events took place and what exactly happened between the defendant and the plaintiff, not with what happened with everyone else in the context of whatever the interaction was. And also, I think that sometimes people have the benefit of police reports, and if they have that, it's helpful. Sometimes they'll actually have hospital or medical reports. That's helpful too. They don't need those reports, but if they have them, they're helpful to look at. Sometimes if it's an adult bringing a request for a restraining order on behalf of a child, a minor under 18, they may have a DSS report or a contact person so that our probation department can call them. And that's pretty much what they need to have. It's also very important that they have identifying information in regard to the defendant, because we use that identifying information, their date of birth, place of residence, and et cetera, so that we look up what the person's record would be, if any, of a criminal record. Because a judge will always look at the criminal record before deciding whether to issue an initial restraining order. So that's the information we have. So the more detail they have about the person, Social Security number, date of birth, address, the better it is for us to be able to know that we're actually getting information about the right person.
Mm-hmm. Are there situations where you see in court where you say these people should have come here sooner, or in fact they came here too soon, that these are really sort of generalized allegations where you can't offer the assistance that they might want?
So I think we certainly see people that if you look at it after the fact, you might make the assessment that the plaintiff should have been in earlier asking for a restraining order. But generally, in really serious cases of physical abuse that's longstanding, sometimes it's just a situation where the person can only come when they're actually ready themselves, because they're very apprehensive about being in a public setting, and they're also concerned about retribution, and they're not so certain that they're going to succeed, and I think they're intimidated by the court process and all. So there are those people at that one end of the spectrum that it would have been better that they'd come in earlier, and then there are people that you kind of suggest in your question that at the other end of the spectrum, they're coming in to really use the process for purposes that are related to other than real concerns about violence. You know, that they're not really in any kind of fear, and it's in a kind of a retaliatory approach to whatever's going on between generally the couple. You know.
And so the court has to carefully assess which situation it is, and that's even more important why there be some support for the fact that the person is claiming that there's an abusive situation in place.
Yeah, because it can be so, that can be at the extreme end of finally someone's coming forward that suffered abuse for a very long period of time, and then all the way in between, that there's a history of restraining orders between the litigants. There's a realization finally on the part of an adult that a step-parent is being physically abusive to a child and never had known about it. There's just so many potential situations. We generally have the probation department check with other agencies, DSS, with the police, depending upon the situation, sometimes with a therapist for a child, because more and more we're seeing restraining orders brought on behalf of children by adults, and wouldn't necessarily be the parent, it could be a guardian. So it's every single case is different.
Mm-hmm. Now, with respect to the privacy issue, some people don't come forward because they don't want the world to know what this very personal problem exists. How does the court treat the individual's privacy when they do come into court seeking assistance?
Well, there's no requirement under the statute that the hearing be closed. So it's in a public setting. The only thing that can happen pretty routinely if someone would like it is to have their address impounded. But otherwise, as you say, it's an open public hearing. I think every judge would be open to an individual asking that the hearing be closed. There's nothing against doing it, I don't think. But as a general rule, unfortunately, litigants will either in the initial hearing or when it's on the return day, within 10 days of the initial hearing, the defendant has a right to come in and be heard on what should happen then. It's in front of whoever else is in the courtroom.
When you see women come before the court seeking the court's assistance with respect to a restraining order, what do you generally see as the cause or the need for that assistance and the court's intervention?
Well, the immediate concern, of course, is safety. And from the experience I've had over 15 years, both in the district court, in the superior court, and especially when you take calls after hours, as we all do as judges, you see that there are serious threats and serious instances of physical violence, people being stabbed, people being run over by cars, people being terrorized in the middle of the night by former husbands or boyfriends breaking into the apartment. So the level of violence is real and it's severe. And when you start to look for common patterns, what I think it boils down to, apart from those cases where people are suffering from a mental illness, is fundamental lack of respect. And I don't mean respect in the sense that it's used on the street, where someone defers because they're afraid of someone. I mean respect in terms of recognizing the autonomy of other people. And I think that these are dysfunctional relationships, whether they're marriages or boyfriend-girlfriend type relationships. And the dysfunction, I think, stems to a large degree from the failure by one partner, usually the male, to recognize the autonomy of the other person, that other person has a right to pursue their own interests, that other person has a right to end the relationship on reasonable terms if they choose, to have their own friends, to have their own personal property. In these relationships, you often find that the offending party, the abusing party, again, usually the male, exercises an extraordinary amount of control over the other party that any reasonable person would find intolerable.
When they're coming into the district or the probate court, we're generally seeing people who are in crisis. They're in crisis because of a number of reasons. Primarily, it usually speaks to the issue of substance issues, issues of physical violence, fear of physical violence, and frequently it's driven by resources or the lack thereof in the family. Those are the three main areas that result in people coming to court and seeking relief.
And it's generally women who are seeking the court's assistance with respect to restraining orders and things along those lines?
It is a majority of women, but there is a trend that I have been seeing perhaps over the last 2 to 3 years where more and more men are coming in and they're seeking the protection of the court, especially in terms of their concern for fear of abuse in the household.
Do you see that women who have served in the role traditionally, what we would call the wife, the one that may have stayed at home, raised the children, and done those types of household duties that we would traditionally say is the wife's role, are they at a disadvantage when they then have to come before the court for their assistance because of their, you said it deals with financial issues and it deals with substance issues and things along those lines?
Particularly in instances where when women come in they have minor children in the household. There are issues that arise regarding custody of the children. There are issues that arise regarding who is going to essentially temporarily maintain the marital home, and last but not least, issues of support. Probably the most serious issue is that of support and making sure that there are sufficient resources coming into that household so that they're going to be able to survive. If that is something that cannot be addressed, the results can be catastrophic, because at that point, shelter essentially becomes non-existent, medical care becomes non-existent, indeed just the basic necessities of life become non-existent, and they're then essentially thrust upon the public domain for purposes of trying to receive help. The difficulty associated with that is twofold. First of all, the ability to qualify, and then the delay in essentially getting the assistance into the household. So I would say that resources far and away become the most important issue.
According to a June 15, 2006 Harris poll, a majority of U.S. adults think domestic violence is a serious problem facing this country, and broadly recognize some of the major identifying characteristics of domestic violence. They also feel that certain services should be provided to domestic violence victims and their children. Together, let's do something about this problem. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, be well.